Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining another episode of the Educational Leadership Podcast. We have another very special guest. Before we introduce our guest, we do want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Ideal Impact. Ideal Impact's giving away hundreds of millions of dollars to public education in the form of a free gift. So if your district needs unrestricted funds, reach out to Ideal Impact. Okay, today we have another very special guest from Texas, superintendent from Texas. We have Superintendent Bashira from Alamo Heights ISD. Superintendent Bashira, how are you doing today?
I am good. It's a pleasure to be with you this morning to talk about the good things taking place in schools all across the state.
Yes, yes. There's so many good things happening. Yeah, every superintendent we interview, we hear about different things that are just amazing happening within school districts. Because at the end of the day, school districts are just people, right? They're people, there's leaders. And so, yeah, I'd love to hear, just so our listeners get to know you a little bit about, if you could share about your background and then give a little bit of detail around the district, like kind of like the size of the district, location, that sort of thing.
Sure. So I came to the district 30 years ago after graduating from college. I was hired as a first year teacher. I have done everything in between, being a teacher and serving as superintendent. I've served as an assistant principal. I've been at multiple campuses, elementary, middle school. I've served as our HR coordinator and our communications coordinator, director for a few years, assistant superintendent for 8 years. And this is my eighth year now as superintendent here in the district. I heard of Alamo Heights through an interaction with my husband in Pennsylvania. That's where we met, going to school. That's where I'm from. And in that conversation, he made reference to the fact that this was a community that where he wanted to raise his children. He wanted to come back here, and that's very typical of the community that I serve. Folks, who've graduated want to be part of this community with their own families as they grow. We've got incredible multi-generational families, grandparents, we call them, we're the mules here in Alamo Heights. And so we call them grand mules. We have senior mules. We have, alumni mules. We have mini mules who start with us in our employee daycare service center at 3 years old. And so my husband and I got married, moved here, and this was the first job offer that I got. And so started teaching elementary school here. I will tell you that when I talk about my work in Alma Heights, I talk about it being both professional and personal. I have four children of my own who have gone through the system. Two have graduated. I have a senior in high school right now, and my son is an eighth grader. And so I wear the parent hat, as well as the superintendent hat. And I feel like, I get a little bit of street cred around here because I am married to an alumni. So,
That's awesome. Yeah, it's got to be helpful having kids going through school while you're a superintendent because the market research there is second to none, right? So you're getting
right,
direct.
right. I always I feel for the teachers when they get their class list and they see a Bashara, on their list. You have to try to reach out to them to say, I promise to be just a typical mom, throughout all this. And more than anything, I just want to be a cheerleader, for our staff members. We've got incredible talent. I feel like part and one of my strengths really is recruiting and retaining top talent. We've got an incredible positive culture here in this district. People choose to serve here because of the family feel, that we promote, because of the autonomy that we provide them to be a master of their craft. The community support is overwhelmingly positive, and so there's a lot of great things about this community. But first and foremost, just going back to that comment about my children and their teachers, I would feel like my staff would tell you that I'm an incredible champion for all educators and those who support our educators.
Awesome. Yeah. Since we've been talking, I know I mentioned earlier before we started recording, I used to live out towards that area, but I vaguely remember Alamo Heights and it's you're right, it's centrally located. So there's a lot of areas around. There's a lot of other districts, some big districts, if I remember correctly,
Correct.
uh, right around Alamo Heights. Now, Alamo Heights, I remember driving through it at one point. It had that, even though it was central, like kind of San Antonio area, It's still it had that community feel and had some nice, trees and just kind of a just curious. What I mean, it's in Texas. It's central San Antonio. It's got that community feel to it. Uh, what are you passionate about in public education right now? Because it just seems like there could be so many different things to focus on with kind of your location and that sort of thing.
Sure. I am passionate, and I've talked just a little bit about this already, just about elevating the teaching profession. The recruitment efforts are one thing, but our retention efforts and the way that we try to support our employees here, I would say, is an area of passion for me. Specifically, over the last couple months, we've been rolling out. So myself and my human resource director roll out what we call stay interviews. We ask our principals to tell us, 3 to 4 irreplaceable staff members. And that could be a custodian, a secretary, a teacher in the classroom. Because when I talk about the importance of the role of being a teacher, I talk about the importance of supporting that teachers in that role. And, all of us have a part in that. Um, so, we start the stay interview by me sharing with that employee, your principal thinks you're irreplaceable. And I want to learn from you, why it is that you choose to work here in Alamo Heights. Many of our employees drive through other districts to get to us, and so why do you pass through different districts and choose to serve here? And so we have a series of questions that we ask them, and there's always some emotional moments. Teaching is heart work, and our teachers are able to kind of share their hearts with me and with our HR director. And then we do that on every single campus. And after those interviews, then we kind of synthesize the feedback that we got, and we kind of look at some themes in an effort to protect, those things that they're telling us about versus waiting till folks leave in an exit interview where they're telling us everything that went wrong, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It makes sense. And it seems like teachers in your area have so many options. Like,
They
because,
do.
with our listeners, we have like 1,000 listeners a month. And so they're from all over the place. In Texas, you got the Texas Hill Country that's
Hmm.
north. And then if you go further south, you kind of get that, uh, it's still some beautiful area. And then you have the city, and then Alamo Heights. I feel like Alamo Heights is really, really unique because you get kind of an element of several different things there. So once you get that feedback from the teachers, what's the process on transforming the feedback into applicable, initiatives and that sort of thing?
Sure. So after we completed the rounds of stay interviews on each one of the campuses, then we went through, the HR director and myself went through the feedback. We kind of record the feedback, on a spreadsheet as we're visiting with the folks. And then we present that information to our principal director team. We analyze the themes specific to campus as well as just overall district arching themes. And then we have a think tank session, around the table to say, what are the actions that would best support the continuation of some of these things or the extension of some of these things? Something that came up in this last round of stay interviews was the thoughtful way that we build our school calendar to provide our teachers with work days throughout the year, strategically, so that they're able to enjoy their holidays. So for example, they have a holiday break in December, um, before the students come back in January. We have started building in just a full work day so that those teachers aren't up there on the weekend. They get to celebrate their whole holiday, at home, and then they know that they have a work day. So that's something that we hear is valued, and it's something that I feel like has become a retention tool, being able to offer those opportunities throughout the calendar. So that's just an example of taking the feedback, think tanking around it with district and campus leadership, and then understanding the implications of that for teacher retention.
It makes sense. And the think tank, is that like a committee that's been developed, or is that like certain leaders, leaders within the organization, or?
Yeah, it is all of my principals and all of my directors. We meet once a month.
Okay, okay. And then and you'll have like a kind of a filter, like how to filter the ideas, and then put like a weighted criteria per something like that, or
It's not a real formal process. You're making it a
okay,
little formal than
okay. And
and I
my
just
engine,
better
my engine,
to we have, our agenda for those meetings. We start with learning time always,
yeah.
but there are business items, but then there's also brainstorming think tank items that we just need some feedback around.
I bet you see a lot of trends, like as you get, feedback from your staff on like, look, all right, everybody's saying this, so this is definitely okay.
Mhm.
That's that.
Our
Yeah,
teachers, those irreplaceable teachers, truly value their teams. The way that they are supported by their colleagues. Um, and it's been interesting over the years, working with my principals to ensure that those teams are highly functional. We don't necessarily get irreplaceable teacher nominations from teams that are struggling. Those
yeah.
are high performing teachers are ones that feel supported by their teams, feel energized by collaboration with their teams. And so, that's one of the things over the years that just that PLC structure, grade level time, department planning time is just really critical to supporting those high functioning teams.
You got me thinking with the collaborative approach you have and the feedback you're getting from the staff, and it's making me think back to a few years ago when all the online stuff was going on,
Mhm.
because it almost, I mean, I know with online you can collaborate and stuff, but I'm picturing based on what you're describing, people in a room collaborating. Um, is online, has that kind of fizzled out in public ed, or is that
Well, I think we've taken, nuggets of I don't know, strategic benefits from the online platforms. I know that personally, I connect with superintendents all across the state, just because we're able to jump on a Zoom and have those kind of conversations. I feel like our teachers use that, as well as an instructional tool from time to time. But it's interesting. Our community specifically has pushed us to kind of recalibrate the use of technology in our classrooms. When we walked through COVID, we were very quick to stand up a digital platform. I'm really proud of the work that we were able to do. Um, but over the years, we heard from our community that perhaps there was an over-reliance on I'm sorry, on technology as we progressed through the following years. And so we've worked hard to identify non-negotiables around technology use, minutes of instructional technology use during the classroom. We don't want our youngest learners, to be on their iPad all day long. We want them to have books in their hands. We want them to have paper pencil experiences. We want the same thing for our high school kids. We need to make sure that they're prepared to interact in a digital world, but we want to make sure that they have engaging, experiences in the classroom that leads to that profound learning that we expect.
that's so interesting, and I think that's going to continue to evolve, like the digital versus. I mean, I was I was actually thinking about it this morning. So my daughter got me this little planner here, and it's got like a calendar and stuff. And I do a lot of handwritten notes and stuff, but I was thinking like a lot of this stuff you could get on your phone, but I don't know. There's something about physically holding it, opening it
Oh,
up, and looking.
absolutely.
It,
Absolutely.
you get so many apps now, and I mean, there's just you know, it, so yeah, you got your phone here with which has a million things on it, and then you got your okay. Just let's look at this real quick.
Right,
Uh,
right.
I'm oversimplifying it, but I imagine as things evolve, we'll figure out what that balance is between using technology for certain things and more tangible things for others, especially with AI.
Absolutely.
Well, very cool. I know we just have a few minutes left. If you want to share, or any last thoughts, or maybe it could be related to the vision for your district, or any feedback for other educational leaders that are out there. Anything you want to share?
We are walking through a strategic planning process this spring here in Alamo Heights, and we're anchoring conversations and feedback that we're getting from the community around work that took place through an organization that most state leaders in Texas are part of, which is called TASA. We spent time since last July articulating this document, and it's called the Texas Promise, a Vision for Public Education. And it's based off work that happened back in 2006, where 35 superintendents came around and just said, like, we've got to articulate what we're for. We've got to articulate
Oh yeah.
important transformation, instead of public education, believe it or not, was under attack back then. And so we're in a very different landscape now. And this work, this Texas Promise, provides us an opportunity to champion the work that's taking place. And, kind of to me, it provides hope and inspiration for public school leaders all across the state. And so I'm just going to give a plug for that. I was able to serve as one of the co-chairs for that work, but there were about 125 of us across the state that came together to articulate that. And so that's what we're going to anchor ourselves into as we stand up strategic planning here in our district. And again, that brings me some excitement. It brings inspiration to our work. I always talk about our district being a district that's focused on local community-based accountability, not about one test on one day through standardized testing. Our community demands much more from us than just that. And so I'm excited to see what's going to come as a result.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I think it's a great program because, if you don't share what your values are, other people are gonna make assumptions or, whatever content they consume is gonna, come up with their perception of public education. So I think it's great that you're putting that out there, that you are putting that out there because you're right. I mean, it is under attack and we talk about that sometimes on the podcast. Um, is public education perfect? No, it's not. And I think it was the last interview we did. I can't remember how many educators there are, or like millions, right, around the U.S., even around Texas, possibly. And so mistakes will be made, but for the most part, and I think for those that listen to our content and hear the passion, the heart, the focus, everything that's happening with public education, there's some really, really good things happening. And I really think, as people lean in, some people prefer private schools, charter schools, all that stuff. I think if people when people really look at the big picture, they're going to see public education, some of the great things that are happening because it's sometimes it's easy to chase the shiny objects that are out there, for lack of better words, but there's definitely some special things that are happening in public education. So, um,
Absolutely.
that's great. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. You're welcome to come on here again in the future. I know uh, public education is moving all the time. If you look at our episodes from a couple years ago, they're very different than they are today because
Okay.
different focus. So,
Yeah.
um, all right. Well, we'll close things out. Thank you again for being a guest. And thank you to our listeners that have been tuning in. Before we close out, we want to give one final shout out to our sponsor, Ideal Impact. Ideal Impact's giving away hundreds of millions of dollars to public education in the form of a free gift. So if your district needs unrestricted funds, reach out to Ideal Impact. And for those that have been tuning in, stay tuned for future episodes of the Educational Leadership Podcast.